DEI dying, or is it about to get a lot worse?
Look, man, real DEI is only going to come from black leadership. I don't know how to do it because I'm not a black leader, but I do know how to tell if it's working. Just keep an eye on right-wing media. The more they're...
That little bit with the header over it was obviously Charlamagne The God, or who I like to call Leonard the Fraud, but don't worry, we'll discuss that more over the course of this video here. Yeah, I already know some people have already gotten upset, but believe me, by the time you get done with this video, you'll see exactly why it is that I call him what I call him. Here's the deal. Right now, at this moment in time, there's this obvious conversation. And of course, this conversation has been ongoing for a while, but it's once again picked back up. And of course, the conversation is about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, I've made a few videos on this. I've talked about the potential problems that it could bring about. So don't think about this video as me just rehashing some old takes, but more along the lines of looking into what's actually going on. So last week, this topic began to trend once again. And obviously, Charlamagne The God, Leonard, he was filling in for Jon Stewart on the Daily Show. Now, I've never really and truly cared that much for the Daily Show, not since the 1990s when Comedy Central first began to ramp their lineup up. And many people forget that the first host of the Daily Show was actually Craig Kilborn. But still, I'm obviously an old hat, and I obviously remember that. But still, though, over time, the Daily Show, you've had Jon Stewart, you've had Trevor Noah, you've had now Charlamagne The God, who's been filling in from time to time. So obviously, they're going to change things up. But still, though, this topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion is obviously a hot topic for a multitude of reasons. Well, really, it's not so much for a multitude of reasons. It's a multitude of reasons why it is that people don't like it and why it is that people automatically rush to diversity, equity, and inclusion being the problem. Really, the truth be told is diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, is just the new name for affirmative action, which, of course, I've expressed my problems with that in the past. Of course, you want to make sure that people who get hired for a job, people who work in a certain profession, actually earn the credentials to be in said profession. You want to make sure that, obviously, the doctor who's working on you knows what he or she is doing. You obviously want to make sure that the pilot who's piloting the airplane knows what they are doing. You obviously want to know if the cop who's actually been hired on knows exactly what they are doing, and they did not just get hired because of said color of skin. Now, I want to go ahead and say this right now. I know many people of many different races, many people of color, and many people of color who, quite frankly, are good at what it is that they do. However, diversity, equity, inclusion kind of hurts the progress in a lot of ways, and I'll explain why over the course of this video. I know I said I wasn't going to rehash a bunch of things, but then again, at the same time, though, I never really and truly explained how it is that it actually hurts black people or people of color a lot more than the mainstream media would let you think that it does. Of course, the mainstream media makes you think that it doesn't hurt anything, but at the end of the day, it actually hurts the black community a lot more than you might would think. But we'll get to that here in a second. So how did this conversation get kicked back up in the news? Well, because the state of Texas, they obviously decided to implement a law. Now, before I talk about the law, let's talk about what happened before said law was implemented. The University of Texas decided to let go of 60 some odd people who, quite frankly, were hired due to the diversity, equity, and inclusion policy of the University of Texas.
Senate Bill 17, which took effect in January of this year, bans diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at public Texas colleges and universities. As a result, DEI organizations and clubs are being shut down.
We have so many people of color and we have so many first-generation students, and to just kind of cancel all the safe spaces, and that's really not okay.
In an email sent Tuesday from University of Texas at Austin President Jay Hartzell, he says the university has laid off employees who used to work in DEI programs. The American Association of University Professors say about 60 people were affected by these layoffs and were ordered to shut down all DEI programs by the end of May.
It impacts current students. It's going to impact a lot of people in the future, and they're firing people, and people are losing their jobs.
State Senator Brandon Creighton co-authored Senate Bill 17, which passed last year. He sent a letter to Texas University leaders last week warning they could lose millions of dollars in state funding if they didn't comply with the law. After SB 17 passed, we spoke with DEI critic Sherry Sylvester with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. She says these initiatives are discriminatory to non-minority groups and promote critical race theory.
People think that this is a minority recruitment program. It's not. Our universities and our state agencies should look like Texas.
I gotta say something really quick. If the woman says we want to make the school look a lot more like Texas. Here's the racial demographics. You've got about 40 some odd percent that claim that they're white or identify as white. You've got an additional 20 some odd percent who identify as white Hispanic. I'm pretty sure somebody's probably going to say Tejanas. And of course, you've also got another percentage that says that they're Hispanic, but the black population in the overall percentage is actually quite low, as you guys can see. If you were to go by diversity, equity, and inclusion standards in the state of Texas, and by the state of Texas, I mean the actual racial demographics of the state, you probably, out of a board of about 10 people, you would probably have 4 white people. You would probably have 2 to 3 white people who identify as Hispanic, and then you'd probably have 2 more Hispanics, and then the other person would be black. I'm just saying, if that right there is the standard that you want to go by in the state of Texas, then that's actually what you're going to get. At the end of the day, it's still going to be mostly white people. I'm just throwing that out there. People are out here saying that the state of Texas killed diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, I think the reason why they might would think that is because of this mashup of clips that I'm about to show you, which, by the way, is a combination of the news reports. Now, really quick, I want to go ahead and say this right now. When I went and got the news reports for this particular video, I want you guys to know right now that I did go to the same news organization. And, of course, they did, in fact, show some of the same exact stuff that you guys saw in the first clip, as well as stuff in the new clip, because obviously they were reporting the layoff, and then, of course, a day or two later, they chose to report on the actual Senate bill that, well, let's just go ahead and roll this.
You can say this is going to help students.
Senate Bill 17, which passed last year and went into effect this January, bans diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at public Texas colleges and universities.
It's heartbreaking to me that these people have lost their jobs.
As a result, hundreds of higher education employees around the state have been laid off as DEI programs continue to shut down in compliance with the law. President of the American Association of University Professors, Irene Mulvey, says it's a bill that's unjust.
It's really a tragedy for the entire campus, because moving forward towards a multiracial democracy, finding a way to implement social progress is an important part of our institutions of higher education.
Of course, you've got some people who are saying,
says DEI programs are what brought her to UT.
I came to UT because of a program that aimed to support first generation and low income students. Why are they doing this to us? Can't they see how much this is hurting us?
Meanwhile, University of Texas at San Antonio student Royce Colo says he's celebrating the enforcement of the new law because he found DEI to be discriminatory towards non-minority students.
I think it's a right move because I think it's important to be inclusive of all cultures and all ethnic groups and not just more focused on discussing one group.
Students like Riva Prodruti says it's a step in the wrong direction.
Like, it feels like we're living back in like 1950s Texas. Like, that's not where we want to be.
Discrimination as it promised. It has established an entirely new structure to perpetuate it. Chaz Moore with the Austin Justice Coalition disagrees, saying the law is inherently racist and is now calling on UT to stand against SB 17.
It's beginning to look a lot like A&M around here. Put the statues back up. Put the Confederate flags back up. Let's do all the racist things that we used to do. We keep going back in time, and we can't allow that to happen. UT should be better.
Reporting in Austin.
Before I go any further, you're going to hear me bring this up over the course of this video at least one more time, but I want to go ahead and bring it up now. Affirmative action, for the most part, was something that began to become a much, much hotter topic right around the late 80s, early 90s. Now, of course, there's going to be video essays on that topic later on in the future, but of course, you guys know how I feel. I've always believed that if you apply for a job, you should get that job based upon your merits and not because of your skin tone, okay? It doesn't matter what the job is. I think that should be the case. Of course, if you work in retail or smaller and lower skilled jobs, then obviously it's probably not going to matter. We just need somebody to actually do something. But of course, when you get to much, much more serious jobs, like say being a doctor or a lawyer or something that actually requires some skill, then obviously this right here is going to be an issue. One said incident or one said type of affirmative action that popped up later on down the road, long before diversity, equity, inclusion, but we probably should have seen this coming, was something called the Rooney Rule, which, by the way, will be the subject of a video on this channel later on down the road, because I'm going to start doing videos on just about everything like I normally already do. But of course, it's going to be focused more from how the media actually manipulates and counter it, because it will be a media criticism channel full blown. Let me say this before we go any further. The Rooney Rule was basically a rule that was established in the NFL that said that you had to interview one black candidate or one candidate of color to be the head coach of your team before you chose to hire anybody else. Basically, what you're doing is you're saying, go ahead and bring the black guy in so I can interview him and kick him the hell out. That's basically all the hell the Rooney Rule did. If anything, the Rooney Rule may have been more racist in a lot of ways because basically what you were doing was telling the guy of color, look, I'm only interviewing you because I have no choice but to interview you. That right there is the real problem with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, to the girl saying things that would go back, of course, to the 1950s, I hate to tell you this, but Texas hasn't really changed that much demographically since the 1950s. Still mostly people who are white and whites who identify as Hispanics or Hispanics who identify as white. Texas was never really known for massive black population, so it doesn't like I said before. It doesn't seem to me like diversity, equity, inclusion being removed is going to be doing anything that's going to hurt the state of Texas's demographics or demographic representation. But to the guy who was talking about Confederate statues and things like that, I say, yeah, go ahead and put them back up because the statue argument is absolutely stupid and makes absolutely no sense. You're triggered by a statue, dude. You're triggered by something from the 17th, 18th century. I really and truly have no idea what to tell you. Or 19th century. I really have no idea. Look, it takes a special type of weakness to be triggered by something that's like over 200 years old. I'm just saying. Of course, that last part where the senator talked about it being racist, in a lot of ways it kind of is, and I think it's racist more against black people than it is against white people. Let me go ahead and break down my rationale. You're a black man or you're a black woman. You've been working your entire life, okay? You've been striving to try to get somewhere. You apply for a job. You want to know that you got said job. You want to know that you got the qualifications through your actual hard work and merit. You want to know that you actually did it through that. You don't want to go through the whole, you don't want to go through the whole premise of people saying you only got the job because of your race. You only got the job because of your color of skin. Don't worry, YouTube's probably going to limit the ads in this video anyways, but I might as well go ahead and go through with this. The thing is this right here. In life, you want to know that you achieved something. You achieved said thing through your actual hard work, through your actual brain power, the things that you learned, your actual skills. You want to learn it through that. I remember a long time ago, we had a debate, this was actually a very, very, very old debate. I want to say it was the debate that eventually led to the whole Rooney Rule in the NFL, where it is that you have to interview a black candidate first before you go down the line and actually pick from candidates down the road that you may hire. By the way, that's kind of the point. You see, the Rooney Rule is this right here. The owner has to interview a person of color first before hiring anybody. So you mean to tell me that I can't hire who it is I want or who it is I think fits my team the best? I have to actually interview somebody who's not going to fit my scheme the best first? You see, in a lot of ways, that right there is racist too, because you see, you're forcing a company to interview the person of color. That person of color who's being interviewed is just going to be kicked down the road. They're not going to get the job. You see, you're making that person then become a nuisance, and you see, then you become a headache. You become a bit of an aggravation. I have to interview this person. Look, I'm not going to hire this person, okay? I'm just not going to hire them. So why in the hell do I got, oh God, you're making me interview them? I guess the hope is said person can go in there and dazzle the person, can actually dazzle the employer to get the job. Of course, not everybody is Mike Tomlin, but of course, I guess that's the actual hope. The problem is that most people don't want to hire somebody based just solely on the purpose of diversity itself. So obviously DEI, affirmative action, this is something that quite frankly has been going around for a long time. We just have not actually talked about it more until they actually decided to repackage and rename it, which by the way, some have argued that what's really going on is that DEI, once again, is just the beginning repackaged and renamed. The point is this right here. When you hire somebody, you want to be able to hire them based upon their credentials. You want to hire them based upon their skills, their qualifications, not based upon the color of their skin. Which, of course, if that right there is the case, then obviously paranoia is going to begin to set in. And, of course, not only paranoia, but, as you said, paranoia, but overall mistrust, which, of course, is the exact same thing. Typically, most people keep their paranoia to themselves, but after a while, it's going to begin to get completely out in the middle of everywhere. It's going to be out in the open, and people, quite frankly, are just going to become hostile towards other races. Even if a person is actually qualified for the job there, people are automatically going to assume that it's a diversity hire. So in a lot of ways, it is actually creating a lot more racism, but it's actually hurting those of color a lot more than it would whites. I know some white people are probably going to say, dude, that right there is completely screwed. Are you trying to say that white people need to be quiet? No, I'm saying that white people are correct for pointing this out because obviously the policy itself is extremely racist. You're basically sacrificing somebody who could be qualified in favor of somebody who's not qualified because of the color of their skin. I mean, look at what happened to Harvard a while back. I mean, they were basically promoting one race ahead of a race that, quite frankly, always does better on test scores. That race that always does better on test scores is Asians. But yet we've got to lower the actual bar and we got to put one over rather than having somebody actually earn their way over the bar. You guys kind of see what I'm saying. I know it sounds a little bit confusing the way I kind of explain it, but the point is this right here. You're lowering the overall bar and you're bringing people in on the topic of race because of their skin color and not because of their actual credentials. You want to know if you're dealing with a doctor or an airplane pilot, you want to know that said individual got this based upon the actual merits, meaning their actual work, their knowledge, their experience, rather than just the color of their skin. And of course, this record could also lead to office problems too, which is actually what Charlamagne the Fraud, believe it or not, was actually talking about the other day on The Daily Show. Now, guys, before I play some of this, I want you to know something right now. Because it's The Daily Show, because it's Comedy Central, there are going to be some headers over it. But every now and again, don't worry, the actual original clip will slip in. But of course, the audio is still there. Let's go ahead and watch this.
DEI, in this case, stands for divisive, erroneous, and insidious.
DEI, which stands for didn't earn it.
Discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination.
DEI. DEI stands for Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, and Ice Cube. Yeah. Y'all cheering out there, but do you want with attitude coming to your office? These right-wingers are crazy, right? Jesus. But here's the part where you all stop applauding everything I say. The truth about DEI is that although it's well-intentioned, it's mostly garbage. Okay?
Back to what I just said about the Rooney Rule. At the end of the day, all diversity, equity, inclusion is that I was forced to hire you because of your race. I mean, I want you to think about something really quick. When you go to a job and when you actually do some work, I want you just to kind of think about this for a second. You get hired by a hiring manager, HR. HR has got a manager, and then they've also got a manager too. It goes up the chain, eventually all the way to the owner. What I'm saying is that diversity, equity, inclusion at the end of the day, kind of like what I said with the Rooney Rule is, I've only hired you because of your race. I didn't hire you because you're special. I didn't hire you because you're good. I only hired you because of the color of your skin. In a lot of ways, that's actually way more racist because it's telling the person who you just hired, who happens to be black, you're only special because of your race. You're not special because of anything else. That's the biggest problem with diversity, equity, inclusion. And obviously, University of Texas, the state of Texas as a whole, they obviously were the first major players to actually act. I'm pretty sure that others have acted on it before in some way or another. But obviously, they see through the BS. Many of us have been saying this for a while. You need to get a job based upon your actual credentials. You need to get it based upon merit, because this is actually a meritocracy, meaning that you get hired based on merit. I mean, I know the radical leftists want that. They want more representation. But at the end of the day, representation is just going to get people killed.
It's kind of like the Black Little Mermaid. Just because racists hate it doesn't mean it's good. And you know I'm right, because every one of you has sat through one of those diversity training sessions and thought, this is some bullshit. And it's not just you. Over 900 studies have shown that DEI programs don't make the workplace better for minorities. In fact, it can actually make things worse because of the backlash effect. Remember DARE from school? Y'all remember DARE? Yeah. She said, woo. DEI training is like DARE for racism. And you all know how effective that was. I was sitting there going, oh, shit, there's a ton of fun drugs I should try. I didn't even know about Molly. Thanks, Officer John.
Leonard is coming at this from a different perspective. He's coming at this from a perspective of if you get hired on at a job. Like, for example, I've worked at both Walmart and Sam's Club. I've also worked at Lowe's. I've worked a lot of retail. If you've worked retail, then quite frankly, you already know where I'm going with this. One of the first things you do is you go through a seminar. You got to watch the actual rules and regulations and whatever BS comes your way as far as the videos themselves. Then again, though, sometimes some of those videos were actually pretty good. I remember working a construction job and, of course, having to be given the same exact seminars. Of course, most of it was also safety, which, by the way, was absolutely required. That's what I'm saying. Safety, of course, hazards, anything OSHA-related, that's actually required. If you get hired on a police department, even after your basic law enforcement training, guess what you're going to have to go through? You're going to have to go through a course of, guess what? Department regulations, which of course is then going to lead into a refresher course, which is going to then lead into a field training officer, because you got to know the department regulations as well as the state law itself. This right here, diversity, equity, inclusion, is almost like nothing more than a good old-fashioned seminar. That right there is the main thing that Charlemagne's talking about. You see, after a while, people are just going to watch the videos or whatever, and they're going to be like, just put something else on. He's coming at it from a different point of view, but of course, this entire situation will eventually take a turn. Let's watch some more.
Okay. And honestly, I'm not surprised these programs didn't work, and here's why. It's just corporate PR. They want good vibes, and also they want to cover their ass, okay? Did you know that if a company gets sued for civil rights violations, just having a DEI program will be counted as evidence in their favor, even if the program doesn't do shit? Okay? It's the I have a black friend of the legal system, all right? We don't need corporate DEI. Yes, we want diversity and equity and inclusion, but we don't want it from Vaseline. Although I'm not going to front, Vaseline has been there for the biggest failure of DEI is that the number of black people in power at big companies is basically the same as it was 5 years ago. In fact, maybe the only thing that DEI has accomplished is giving racist white people cover to be openly racist.
DEI breeds complacency, Dana, and complacency kills.
We're going to have doctors who don't know how to perform heart surgery, and we're going to have planes that are falling out of the sky.
Boeing recently bragged not about being the best in the business, but about surpassing its diversity quotas. Oh, goody. But then, not so good, a door flying off one of Boeing's 737 Supermaxes.
I'm sorry. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
I want to go back to the office really quick just for a second, okay? If somebody gets hired based upon the race rather than the credentials, here's the thing. The office, while it is definitely small and while it is that people oftentimes communicate with one another, like I said before, it's the things that are not communicated. Also, like I said about paranoia, let's just say that the person who got hired based upon the diversity, equity, and inclusion standards, let's say that they didn't... let's just say that they want to prove that they did not get hired for that same reason. Paranoia, by the way, could come on their end as well. Maybe you have somebody who, quite frankly, doesn't really care. They're just happy to have somebody there with them. But, of course, next thing you know, the other person, just because somebody says something out of the way or even some form of criticism, they may get mad and suddenly play the race card. That's all the hell DEI really and truly is just an excuse to play the race card. Oh, you don't like me because of the color of my skin. That's really what the hell it is at the end of the day. No, I don't like you because you suck at your job. You should have been hired to begin with. Next thing you know, that person loses their job. Just basic common criticism is going to get people fired from their job, and the next thing you know, places are probably going to suck. I mean, as a result, it's because the good workers, the people who actually know what the hell is going on, they've lost their jobs, and now the place is being ran by a bunch of idiots who have no idea what the hell is going on because they didn't get hired because of their credentials. They got hired because of... Now, I did cut some of that up, and I cut some of that up for a reason, because it's actually a pretty daggone long clip. However, there were some things that Charlemagne did say, believe it or not, that actually turned out to be, quite frankly, pretty daggone insightful. I was actually impressed that Leonard said it. For example, we'll take the Baltimore Bridge incident. Now, here's some of it.
Pilot, I'm not worried that we're going to crash. I'm worried that we're going to get pulled over. Okay? That's right. That's right. That's right. And no, officer, I will not step out of this vehicle. All right? But yeah, they're blaming DEI for everything. Even that bridge in Baltimore. They called Baltimore's mayor the DEI mayor, like he was given the job for being black. Then they said the shipping company was too focused on DEI instead of safety. But almost the entire leadership of the company is white. No black people, right? If anything, the Baltimore mayor, he should have been the one to make it racist. Just come out like, these crackers knocked down my bridge. Okay? All right?
Honestly, wanted to make a video on the Francis Scott Key Bridge incident. However, the more and more I looked at things, the more and more I could not figure out what the hell was going on. Even though you had people like Tim Pool saying that it was a controlled debt, you had all kinds of conspiracy theories out there. And people, of course, looked at the mayor and they were basically screaming he was a DEI mayor, even though the city of Baltimore is like 70% black. Sounds to me like a black mayor was going to happen sooner or later. Even though DEI could have actually been a problem, of course, everybody on you guys obviously saw that, but still at the same time, it doesn't mean that DEI was not the issue. But still at the same time, though, I think it was actually a very, very good point to bring up that more than likely it was probably not the issue. It could have been operator error. It could have been anything and everything. That right there is also something else that people need to understand. DEI is also something that, quite frankly, can hinder the actual truth of an actual situation as well. Check it out. Let's just say that you have something like, say, what happened in Baltimore with the Francis Scott Key Bridge. People automatically go ahead and assume this DEI. They go ahead and run with the narrative, even though DEI may not have been what actually caused it, even though it's also possible that DEI could have caused it. Now, what if you have situations where, where DEI did cause something to go wrong? Like, for example, Boeing continues to deny what the hell happened with their company, what the hell's been going on with the, let's just say, the quality control section of their aircraft, of their company. They keep going through the actual hoop-de-hoop of basically saying, look, diversity, equity, inclusion is not what caused this, but yet you got a guy who magically, for whatever reason, unalived himself before going in and testifying on this very, very issue. The point is this right here. Diversity, equity, inclusion, it's got to go. It's a problem, and obviously somebody, another state, obviously saw that this was the problem, got their cojones together, and decided to actually pass a law pretty much getting rid of it. And that right there is why this issue has been getting talked about more and more and more, which, of course, don't worry, it will definitely come up more and more and more because other states at some point in time will pass laws basically getting rid of diversity, equity, inclusion because diversity, equity, inclusion, as I've already explained, is a bunch of BS. And it's actually way more divisive than it needs to be. Let me explain what I mean. As I have said over and over the course of this video, if you want to get a job, you need to get it based upon your merits. You need to get hired based upon your actual credentials, not because of the color of your skin. That right there is what I'm trying to say. You've got people out there who, quite frankly, are getting passed over. People who are actually qualified who are getting passed over because the company's got to meet a certain quota. Charlemagne, believe it or not, actually did a very, very good job of bringing that up when he talked about PR because for the most part, that's what diversity, equity, inclusion is. Good old-fashioned PR. We're promoting this person. We're bringing this person of color to work this job, even though said person may not even be qualified. There's also a lot more to do with it, of course. And, of course, that will probably come up as a result of a, let's just say, a much, much deeper video because I want to say it was the Daily Wire actually conducted an interview with people from Duke University Medical Center about said politics, diversity, equity, inclusion, and some of the things that they found out would quite frankly scare the literal hell out of people, especially those who may have to get operated on or may have to do a certain procedure at said medical institution. But that right there is for the day. The point is this right here. Diversity, equity, inclusion, we all know is an absolute joke. It has been for a while. It's just another form of affirmative action, except it's also much, much worse. Also, something else too to go on top of the Supreme Court, they already got rid of it at the collegiate level. But the question is diversity, equity, inclusion dead? Obviously, in the state of Texas, it is dead. And I think that this right here is the first salvo of many salvos to end this crappy practice. By the way, one more thing needs to be said before I end this video. Typically, when one state takes charge on this, when one state tends to stand up and actually assert itself and say, look, we're done with this, it tends to have a trickling down effect, meaning that it tends to go down to other states. So don't be surprised if you see a state like, say, Louisiana here in the near future, get rid of this. A state like, say, Arkansas, get rid of this. Oklahoma is another example. I'm pretty sure Florida has already tried. Don't be surprised if this right here does not happen. However, one more thing does need to be said before I end this video. Don't be surprised if some point in time, these people don't try to rebrand it somehow. I'm just saying it always finds a way of showing back up. As I mentioned earlier, the Rooney Rule. The Rooney Rule was something that, quite frankly, did not come up until somebody began to start screaming and hollering about the lack of black coaches in the NFL. when in reality, what they should have been doing was they should have been talking about black owners. But of course, at that time, nobody had the money. But still, I'm pretty sure it's probably going to come back in one way or another. But still, though, it's a good start for the state of Texas to go ahead and start this process, and you'll probably see other states follow suit. With that rather being said, guys, please leave a comment in the comment section. I want to hear what you guys have got think about this word. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section. I'll see you guys later.